Hi, and welcome to Mary Trump Live. Mary is off today. I'm Brian Karam sitting in. And hey, if you haven't noticed, Donald Trump has been little seen this week. He made a fool of himself on CNBC, danced on the White House roof, both on Tuesday, and ran away from a presser. We haven't seen him since Friday. Today, we hadn't seen him all until a few minutes ago. We'll get to that. So let's dive in. Hey, and welcome. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Now, look, we all know that Donald Trump has no regard for the Constitution or history of this country. He doesn't really care about rights or any kind of legal precedents. He just wants power and money, and he doesn't want to go to jail. But reports are emerging that sections from the official Library of Congress online Constitution are now missing. And it's raising major red flags, of course, that Donald may be literally trying to rewrite the Constitution. Today, Rolling Stone reported that Donald Trump is still trying to take over the Library of Congress, but the National Library has already, apparently by accident, modified its online copy of the U.S. Constitution to remove the president's least favorite part, the provision that guarantees people's rights to challenge their detention and demands the government justify their confinement. You know, the due process part, little touchy. The section in question is Article 1, Section 9, which enshrines our right to habeas corpus. This is the provision that requires the government to justify a person's imprisonment before a court of law. Again, due process. And today, some digging by TechCrunch revealed that during the past month, large parts of Section 8 have been removed, and Sections 9 and 10 have been deleted altogether. The Library of Congress posted a statement on their X account today, blaming these incidents on a coding error. Now, we already know members of the Trump regime are no fan of due process, habeas corpus, or anything that sounds Latin. So just look at what White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, Stephen I am a Nazi Miller, had to say about it back on May 11th.
You know, President Trump has talked about potentially suspending habeas corpus to take care of the illegal immigration problem. When could we see that happen, do you think?
Well, the Constitution is clear, and that, of course, is the supreme law of the land, that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus can be suspended in a time of invasion. So I would say that's an option we're actively looking at.
What invasion? Supreme at a time of invasion. Lincoln suspended the right of habeas corpus during the Civil War. You're worried about some immigrants that are coming in to get a job that you don't want them to do. Anyway, so why is Donald so interested in erasing habeas corpus? It's obviously tied to his immigration policies. Today, the Director of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Tom Homan, spoke to the press at the White House. That's one of those wonderful gaggles we get into occasionally with administration officials. And like his boss, Homan's answers are full of spin, lies, disregard for human life, and anything that even remotely resembles science or facts when it comes to immigration policy in this country. An angry, aging Nazi with Ben Turpin eyes. That's how I describe him. Anyway, first, Homan was asked about the fact that a Florida judge was considering whether or not alligator Alcatraz violates environmental law.
To the judge considering halting operations at Alligator Alcatraz over environmental concerns?
I don't understand what environmental concerns are because I was down there. So they take waste out of there every day. They're not having any impact. They haven't put 1 foot of concrete down that wasn't already there. I mean, the airport was already there. Runway was already there. They're moving waste in and out every day. They're moving, sewage water in and out every day. So I don't see any environmental impact. Again, if the judge will make that ruling, go down there and look at it yourself. I'm sick and tired of the radical judges trying to shut down everything we're doing. It's ridiculous. I thought the Supreme Court was pretty clear last month about these radical judges trying to, stop the Trump administration from implementing our agenda that American people voted for.
Nobody voted for that, Tom. And radical judges, they're just calling you into question on your supposed facts. And look, you talked about runways and airports. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about alligator Alcatraz constituting a problem. Anyway, Holman can say whatever he likes, but are we really supposed to believe that the Trump regime is following environmental guidelines when they can't even respect basic human rights? Of course not. Holman also took the opportunity to show his disdain for the nicknames being dubbed for the new immigration facilities being opened. Take a look at that.
I don't name the facilities, but I'll say this, the work of ICE, the men and women of ICE are trying to do their job with integrity and honor. I don't want these names to detract from that. So not naming the facilities, but I wasn't involved in that, but I want people to focus on the hard work and the dangerous work the men and women of ICE are doing. And they're doing the integrity and honor, and I want us to stick to that. And so I don't want the names taking over the great work they're doing. This is serious work and it's dangerous work, so I want to stick with that.
Well, if you have integrity and honor, take off the masks. Otherwise, Tom, how dangerous is it to pick up day laborers? First of all, Donald and the rest of the regime are pushing names like Alligator Alcatraz. That isn't us. Those are on the signs that you all posted. You're the first one to call it Alligator Alcatraz. So take it up with the boss. Now, Holman is right. The work is dangerous if you're doing the work that they're supposed to be doing, picking up dangerous felons. But you can't come out and say we're going to pick up 3,000 a week or a month or put any kind of limits or numbers to it. The work has to be done. It's investigative work. It's dangerous. It's also dangerous when you pick up nonviolent immigrants and deny them due process. It is going to get dangerous. That's how ICE is involved in Donald Trump's attempt to take over our country and disappear people. Anyway, Holman was asked about reports of medical incidents at Alligator Alcatraz, again, their name. And despite there being horrific reports coming out about many of the immigration facilities run by ICE, he completely brushed that issue off. Take a look.
Mr. Holman, Scripps News has learned that there was a major medical incident at Alligator Alcatraz.
Major what?
Major medical incident at Alligator Alcatraz.
What was it?
What could you tell us about that?
I can tell you I went to Alligator Alcatraz 2 days ago, and I'm sick and tired of false stories about Alligator Alcatraz. Someone asked me the other day that the priest wasn't allowed in to get masked. Wrong. They got the records there. They showed me the records. Clergy have been allowed on there. And I walked through the medical facility there. Not one person was in the trauma unit at all. I talked to the head medical person. Shared with me, what they're getting is some people don't, stomach ache or nothing serious has happened there. And if something serious is happening, they got a helicopter right there to take people to the nearest trauma center. So what I saw was a well-run facility.
God, this is one gaggle. I wish I had been there. I don't really like Holman too much, but let's hold him accountable. He never answered the damn question. You could be there all you want. That doesn't mean that, what was reported to have happened didn't happen. Just means you didn't see it. And by the way, if you can't get medical service, let's face it, what we're looking at isn't a detention facility. It's a concentration camp. And that's what Alligator Alcatraz is. Meanwhile, following up on reports that deportees will be sent to Rwanda, Holman had a non-answer, giving us little insight into what's to come or who's going to go to Rwanda. Take a look.
First deportees to be sent to Rwanda.
I missed the question.
When can we expect the first deportees to be sent to Rwanda?
Working on it.
We're working on it. How about you work on the English language and some logic? Anyway, let's change that. I get tired of Tom Holman. Let's shift to a story about resistance to Donald's agenda. That would be the Texas Democrats. I would say brave Texas Democrats, but to be a Democrat in Texas, you kind of have to be brave. They're daring to defy Donald and his hostile takeover of Texas, and they're holding out on their return to the state. As you remember, they have fled the state so they could disrupt a quorum and not vote in some gerrymandering. They're facing greater threats than ever before. Today, their hotel in Illinois had to be evacuated due to a bomb threat early in the morning. Local law enforcement luckily found no device, but the safety of the Democrats, we're calling this doxing, has been called into question as Republicans ramp up rhetoric that the Democrats should be punished. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, for one, threatened to hunt down the Democrats who are simply trying to save their state from being gutted by gerrymandering redistricting. And hunting down in Texas has a particular onerous smell about it. And you know, I would say go to Crawford Ranch or maybe go hunting with Dick Cheney on one of those canned hunts if you want to know what hunting down means in Texas. The facts show that there isn't a law on the books that the governor or the AG could use to arrest those who have left the state. But they have inherited Trump's intimidation tactics as they try to steamroll the Democrats and remove any dissent from the state from the MAGA party wants and needs. What can I tell you? Having lived in Texas, this doesn't surprise me. I can only tell you that the quality of representative in Texas has gone far down in the last 30 years, and to the point where you have to wonder whether it's snails, slugs, or perhaps incoherent. I'm not going to go there. Anyway, the facts show that the Democrats are calling out Republicans for this rhetoric, blaming them for the threats of violence, but they're still refusing to back down, which is a good thing. Texas State Representative John Busey III said on Twitter, quote, "This is what happens when Republican state leaders publicly call for us to be hunted down. Texas Democrats won't be intimidated." Now we'll shift from Texas accents to a parched demon voice. That's right. Time to talk about Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., or as I like to call him, Worm in the Head Kennedy. Yesterday, the HHS announced it's canceling almost $500 million in mRNA vaccine development funds. I can't make this stuff up. The cuts are occurring to the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority. And here's what Secretary Kennedy had to croak about the matter in a video posted the same day.
Over the past few weeks, BARDA reviewed 22 mRNA vaccine development investments and began canceling them. Let me explain why. Most of these shots are for flu or COVID, but as the pandemic showed us, mRNA vaccines don't perform well against viruses that infect the upper respiratory tract. Here's the problem. mRNA only codes for a small part of the viral proteins, usually a single antigen. One mutation and the vaccine becomes ineffective. After reviewing the science and consulting top experts at NIH and FDA, HHS has determined that mRNA technology poses more risks than benefits for these respiratory viruses.
What risks? What risk? You have no clue. This is so full of crap. Anyway, a New York Times article said that. And that ran this morning, quoting the director of the Pandemic Center at the Brown University School of Public Health. Jennifer Nuzzo said, quote, "By issuing this wildly incorrect statement, the secretary is demonstrating his commitment to his long-held goal of sowing doubts about all vaccines. Had we not used the life-saving mRNA vaccines to protect against severe illnesses, we would have had millions of more COVID deaths." Folks, that's a fact. And I will remind you that during the first Trump administration, he advocated those mRNA vaccines. In fact, I was there and asked him that question, that very question, on the tarmac outside of the Oval Office, as he was in his, one of his chopper talk sessions, where he said there were no deaths and there weren't going to be any deaths because we were so on top of it. So back then, he was touting the mRNA vaccines, at least briefly. Terrifying to think, well, what the next pandemic will look like with this guy. Now, speaking of things Donald is bad at handling, boy, there's an open line I'm not going to touch. Let's talk about the Epstein scandal. In a breaking story, senior Trump administration officials are gathering at Vice President J.D. I Love My Sofa Vance residence this evening to discuss several pressing matters, the most pressing being the Jeffrey Epstein case. Attorney General Pam Bondi, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, and White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles are all rumored to be attending. The group will supposedly discuss several topics, but with the Epstein scandal still fresh in their minds, they're going to have to talk about that. And while Donald's staff talks strategy, Republicans are starting to try a new one of their own to get the public to trust Ghislaine Maxwell. Take a look at what Speaker, and I use this term affectionately, Mike Johnson told NBC News last week.
Let me move on to Ghislaine Maxwell. As you know, Mr. Speaker, the Deputy Attorney General spent 2 days interviewing her. She, of course, has been convicted of grooming, recruiting, abusing young teenage girls, along with Jeffrey Epstein. Mr. Speaker, Maxwell's attorney said she answered all questions honestly and truthfully. But do you think that Ghislaine Maxwell can be trusted?
Well, I mean, look, it's a good question. I hope so. I hope that she would want to come clean. We certainly are interested in knowing everything that she knows. And as you'll note, in our House Republican majority, we're working towards that. Chairman Comer and our Oversight Committee has already issued their own subpoena. They want to bring in Ghislaine Maxwell as well. I hope she's telling the truth. She is convicted. She is serving a 20-year sentence for child sex trafficking. And so her character is in some question. But if she wants to come clean now, that would be a great service to the country, and we'd like to know every single bit of information that she has. I certainly hope she's telling the truth.
Her credibility is in question. She's a convicted felon. She profited off of trafficking. She set up the young girls that were abused, and she, by the way, participated in the abuse. Why would you expect her to tell you the truth? Is she going to incriminate herself further? I don't know. But how convenient. Maxwell is now trustworthy and able to do a great service for our country and can, in other words, clear Donald's name. Let's be blunt. Even MAGA doesn't trust her. No one in this country wants to see a sexual predator who aided and abetted the most infamous trafficker of young females since the Emancipation Proclamation became law. No one wants to see that person get a pardon. Sorry, shouldn't happen. Anyway, Trump was on to some really important things today. In case you missed it, at the end of the day, like I said, he was in the Oval Office talking about gas prices. Of course, it's no longer $1.99 that's the lowest. It's up to $2.45, Donnie. And according to Donald, and apparently he's looking to get a job as a television host. Take a look.
I've got an entertainment-based question for you. A few weeks ago, Stephen Colbert announced that he was leaving his show. Howard Stern announced that him and Sirius XM Radio are parting ways. Do you think the hate Trump business model that's been in the entertainment business is going out of business because it's not popular with the American people?
Well, it hasn't worked, and it hasn't worked really for a long time, and I would say pretty much from the beginning. Colbert has no talent. I mean, I could take anybody here, I could go outside on the beautiful streets and pick up a couple of people that do just as well or better. They get higher ratings than he did. He's got no talent. Fallon has no talent. Kimmel has no talent. They're next. They're going to be going. I hear they're going to be going. I don't know, but I would imagine because they get, Colbert has better ratings than Kimmel or Fallon. You know that. Howard Stern is a name I haven't heard. I used to do a show, we used to have fun, but I haven't heard that name in a long time. What happened? He got terminated?
Yeah, they're going to separate ways because I think what they're offering salary-wise is real low than what he's getting.
You know when he went down? Whenever you want. You know when he went down? No, before. When he endorsed Hillary Clinton, he lost his audience. People said, give me a break. He went down when he endorsed Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, he hadn't heard of Howard Stern. What a bunch of crap. You know, the two people he didn't talk about? South Park. Matt and Trey. You know why? Because he doesn't want to approach somebody who's got his number. You know what I'm talking about? Anyway, time now for an important emotional support moment. Light pollution. It doesn't get talked about much, but it really does change the way we see the night sky. I'm an amateur astronomer. I agree. And a time-lapse footage we're going to take a look at, shot mostly in California. Filmmaker Saram Murali takes us through all 9 levels of the Bortle scale, which measures night sky brightness from city glow to true darkness. It shows us how the stars in the Milky Way come alive in dark skies. It's really peaceful. And in the coming weeks, if you take a look, we're going to see a planetary alignment of 6 planets, a new moon, and the highlight of the Perseid meteor showers on the 12th and the 13th of the month. So find you some dark skies, baby. Take a look. That's my emotional support. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. I'd like to go to letters now, or your comments. Midas Cheryl gifted 1 Mary Trump Media membership. Thank you, Midas Cheryl. Greg Bender, 404, Constitution not found. Amen, brother. You know, one of the things I do, and I recommend everybody does it actually, is I have a copy sitting right here on my desk of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. It's in a small booklet. I bought it. I keep it with me at all times. I actually will quote it when necessary. You know, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when any government becomes destructive of these ends, it is right of the people to alter or to abolish it and institute a new government deriving its just power from the consent of the government. That was my 8th grade. I had to remember that. Anyway, thanks for that, Greg, and the reminder. Diana, if ICE has integrity, I'm Cinderella. Mouse henchman fee. Hey, you can't get the mice in here. I'm sorry, unless they've signed the right papers. ICE has, look, there are some, let me clear that up. There are some members of ICE that I know and have known for years that actually do their job. What they were doing about getting violent criminals out of the country, that's a legitimate concern. Violent criminals anywhere are a legitimate concern. But you can't put a quota and say, all right, roust up 30,000 or 3,000 a month or whatever, and then actually do the job you're supposed to do. You end up destroying the Constitution and civil rights by doing that. The people who are dangerous are not easy to find. So you can't go to the grocery store. You can't go to the open air market. You can't go to places where day laborers are. That's not where the dangerous criminals are. It takes real investigation. And for those people who do that job, I tip my hat to you. For those who are rounding up individuals for no reason at all, I have no respect for that. And I would not do that job. If that's what they told me my job would be to do, and I was a member of ICE, I would quit, and I would make a public stink about the fact that they have subjugated the Constitution. Just me. Barbara Schmaltz, member for 2 months. RFK Jr. is a creep. He's not even liked well by his family. But what I find most disgusting about the man with a worm in his brain is that he completely rejects science. And I don't like the people who also say science is wrong. It's always getting it wrong. It's always got to change its story. That's science. Science isn't an end. It's a means. It is, testing information, vetted factual information. That's what journalism is supposed to be, using the scientific method. We communicate with people. When we find out we make a mistake, we correct ourselves. That's what science does. Many years ago, everyone thought that the sun revolved around the earth. And then, of course, it cost some people dearly to say otherwise. But nonetheless, science proved that that's not the case. So science is paramount, is king. Vetted factual information is king. And RFK Jr. is a twerp. Just my thoughts. Anyway, Lady Di in Nevada gifted 5 Mary Trump Media memberships. Thank you, Lady Di in Nevada. Mary Baca, member for 2 months. Think the worm got into RFK's vocal cords. He has a condition that sounds like he ate razor blades. I can't remember what it is, and I feel bad for the poor guy having a voice like that, but it doesn't give him any excuse to distribute mis and disinformation. That's what I have to say about that. Stacy, $2. I missed the first half of the show fee. I don't know what that means. I'm sorry you missed the first half of the show. I hope you enjoyed the second half of the show. And in the middle of nowhere, I know where that is. I have a grandson, by the way. We were driving out in the desert, and he goes, "Are we in the middle of nowhere?" That was his proclamation, in the middle of nowhere. So if you're out in the middle of the desert, you're in the middle of nowhere. She, in the middle of nowhere, is wondering what DJT thinks about this meeting at the observatory. Also, Maxwell will say whatever works best for her. Well, Maxwell's going to say whatever can get her a pardon, yes. So I wouldn't trust her any more than I could throw her. And as far as what Donald Trump thinks about the meeting at the observatory, it would have to be sanctioned by Donald, or it's simply not taking place, because nothing happens under the Donald's watch that he doesn't tacitly approve. Either that or the other two that are pulling his chain, which is Susan Wiley and Steve Miller. If they're in favor of it, it'll happen. So I can guarantee you that they're, as they said in the movies, the whole 9 yards, somebody's cahooting with somebody. Epimoo, Ghislaine Maxwell, the future polite outspoken White House press spokesperson, a possible proposal for a subtle change of the face of the voice of the U.S. Well, I would not be surprised if Ghislaine Maxwell ended up being the future spokesman of this White House. In fact, nothing would surprise me about this White House. If Donald Trump came out in the middle of the press briefing room and said, turn the TV down, the bathroom's overflowing, I would just say, well, that's done. And then someone on his staff would come out and say he was a genius for saying it. So nothing is beyond, above, below Donald Trump. They lower the bar every day. And it's going to be that way for another 1,262 days, barring any unforeseen circumstances. So get used to it. It's as I say, if you're worried about the American democracy, that's in the rearview mirror. Our present is destroyed. What are we going to leave for the future of our children? That's what we have to be fighting for, our children and our grandchildren. My little 5-year-old grandson who rides in the car and goes, hey, we're in the middle of nowhere. I hope he's not 30 years old and saying that about American politics. So with that said, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And I want to thank Mary for having me again. You can catch me on Substack, of course, at Reporter's Notebook. And I want to thank all the moderators for a fantastic I'm sorry I was late. Hands yellow, heart red. I'm not sure what that means, but I will go with it. Hands yellow, heart red. I saw super sticker. Remember from a thing. There you go. And Sammy Carter, thanks for that. I again want to thank everybody. It's on my podcast is called Just Ask the Question, in its 7th year, talking about the press and politics. And of course, join Mary here. Hit the like button down below and subscribe to Mary Trump Media for more. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll catch you next time.